Hi everyone, I hope you can see and hear me okay. So just to start off by saying a very warm welcome to our remote interview workshop today. My name is Hannah Pack. I'm an Access and Outreach Officer at Somerville College.
I'm Emma, I'm the Access Officer at Trinity College.
And I'm Nuala, I'm the Access and Outreach Support Officer at Somerville College.
So just to say that the aim of the workshop today is to increase your familiarity with the interview process, to give you an idea of what to expect, and to boost your confidence by guiding you through some practice questions, give you some idea of how best to prepare and where you can go to find out more information. So just a brief summary of the kind of format of this session. We're going to spend the next 20 minutes giving you a general introduction to interviews. And we'll say a little bit about the technical logistics as well. So just to start off with, I wanted to just remind everyone that the interview is just one part of the overall application process, and no part of this is taken in isolation. So just to remind you of all the different stages and elements of the process that you're being assessed on, the interview shouldn't be seen as, you know, the be all and the end all. It is one part of a wider picture. So you've also already submitted personal statements, you've had a teacher write you a reference, you've possibly also submitted written work depending on the course you've applied for. Most of you will have done an admissions test, and of course before they interview you, the tutors will also have seen your GCSE grades and your predicted grades and any relevant contextual information as well. So the interviews really are taken as part of a wider holistic picture there. And just to say that the interviews will feel challenging, but that doesn't mean that they're going badly. So it's always, we'll say more about this, but it's difficult to judge how well you've done in the interview. So it's best not to try. And even if you think you've done a bad interview, it's as we say, because it's only one part of all these other elements, a bad interview can still be balanced out by a good performance in admissions tests or in your UCAS form. And as I said, there is the context of your grades is also taken into account in your application as well. So they don't just look at your grades in isolation, they do look at the kind of performance of your school on average as well, to take that into account when you apply. So what we look for in interviews and in the admissions process more generally, first and foremost, academic ability is really important, but not just your academic ability, your academic potential as well. So they're very much trying to assess what you're capable of, and they're not expecting you to be some sort of perfect, finished, polished product by any means. They're looking to see how you can cope with something new and apply your existing skills and knowledge to that. So they're also testing for your independent thought, your independent thinking, your critical thinking, engagement with new ideas. They want to see a real genuine enthusiasm for the subject, so a lot of real interest there, and that will feed into things like your commitment to studies. So the tutors definitely do want students who are going to be motivated throughout their degree and self-motivated to be kind of proactive and take the initiative. And then there's other selection criteria that's specified on the course page that you've applied for, so it can be worth just checking that before the interviews as well. There are sort of subject-specific skills that they're looking for as well. So in terms of what to expect, just to say this year, because of coronavirus, all the interviews will be taking place online, as you are already aware, and they'll be happening on Microsoft Teams. The university is anticipating that they will probably take place at school, but obviously that's is down to you, but the hope is that if you are able to take them at school, that might provide you with more reliable internet and technical resources and things. You may have more than one interview with more than one college. It's typical to have at least 2 interviews usually, and some students have more than that, and they're usually you will have 2 tutors in each interview, so there's never your interview performance is never going to be down it's never going to be down to one single tutor. So that makes it kind of fairer. And the interviews typically last about half an hour. They are academic in focus. And as I said before, they're not so much testing your existing knowledge as challenging you with something new. So they're usually trying to see how you cope with something that's unfamiliar and how you cope with applying your existing knowledge and skills to an unfamiliar task or challenge. And that's how they sort of assess your critical thinking skills. So there is a link you can see on the slide here where you can check your anticipated interview dates. As we've said, you may have further interviews scheduled, but you'll be given at least 24 hours notice of these. And because each subject is different, that's why you will have subject-specific sessions after this general session, which will give you more detail. So just to say a little bit about the kinds of questions you can expect, and then we'll give you some top tips. So firstly, there are no trick questions or hidden agendas. So it's not the sort of thing where we're looking for students who have kind of pre-prepared, like rote answers. That's definitely not what the interviews are about at Oxford. You can expect some icebreaker questions just as a warm-up. So this is one thing that is worth having some sort of pre-prepared answer to, is why do you want to study your subject? Hopefully you guys can already give a plausible answer to that, because you probably had to do it in your personal statement. So why do you want to study your subject? You might get asked why study your subject? What's the point of it? And then they usually ask you something about your personal statement. So it's definitely worth rereading your personal statement for the interview, because you can anticipate some things that they might pick up on. So what did you think of this book, article, documentary, concept? So any super curricular resources that you made reference to in your personal statement, that is anything related to the course, but that goes beyond your A-level study. Be prepared to talk about that, because it won't look very impressive if you say you've read a book and then have nothing to say about it if they ask. They might ask you about current or relevant events, so particularly for courses like medicine. But particularly if you've made reference to something on your personal statement, again, depending on the course, there might be specific work experience or something, and the situation might have developed further since then. So you might, particularly if there are current events that are relevant to your subject at the moment. Medicine's the most obvious one for that with coronavirus, but of course there could be political things as well for PPE and stuff. And then the other sort of big thing that the interviews focus on is unseen material. So it's common to be given some material to look at in advance of the interview. Sometimes you might get given material during the interview, and that material, again, depending on the subject, it could be an article, it could be an object, it could be an extract from a text, piece of poetry, something like that, some data, some graphs, that sort of thing. And it will be designed to be unfamiliar and challenging. So, it's not going to be necessarily something that will be similar to what you've done at A-level, because the whole point is to see how you cope with a challenge, and they're not expecting you to know all the answers. They want to see your thinking process and how you approach the challenge. You can practice sort of looking at unseen material as well, and sort of practicing the analytical skills involved in that. Problem solving questions. So again, based on existing knowledge, but applying the existing knowledge and skills to something new. So I'm going to hand over to Nuala, who's going to continue by giving you some top tips.
Okay, hi guys. So these are some tips for kind of the interview as a whole. So first of all, something really important is to read over your personal statement. So Hannah's already said that some questions might come up early on about what is in your personal statement, things that you've read. So make sure that you've actually read those things. You might not have looked at your personal statement for a while. I'm sure your school will have it on record if you've managed to lose it. So make sure that you can talk about whatever's on there. Get used to talking and thinking out loud. It will be really difficult for the tutors, especially of Microsoft Teams, to know how you're thinking through a problem if you're not thinking out loud. Even if you don't feel like you've got to the answer yet, especially if you don't feel like you've got to the answer yet, just talk through your thought process, because that way they can kind of support you, maybe push you in a certain direction or give you some more information you need to get to or closer to the answer. If you are unsure of anything, then do feel free to ask for clarification. That's absolutely fine to say you don't understand a word or an equation or what information you need or what exactly the question is asking. Just ask and they'll be happy to clarify or word it differently. Try to think of the interview like a tutorial or like a mock tutorial. It's quite a good way to experience what Oxford teaching is like. And that means engaging in academic discussion with the tutor, with these experts in their subject. So try to enjoy it because, yeah, it's a really great opportunity to experience a little bit of Oxford. Speak with current students. So some colleges and departments have kind of chat with me features on their website, so you can start a chat online with a student. So Somerville has that, for instance. And there are also events being run by lots of different colleges and departments that you might get sent by your school or flagged up on the website, the Oxford website or college websites, or your subject department specifically. Don't judge your performance or try and discuss it and dissect it with other people and try and figure out whether you did well or badly. It's generally impossible to tell. A lot of people think they did really, really badly, and then it turns out that they did fine. And also, as Hannah mentioned earlier, we're looking at applications holistically. Your interview isn't the only thing we're looking at anyway. So even if it wasn't incredible, you might have submitted really good written work or an amazing admissions test that make up for it anyway. Don't forget to listen to the tutor, to the question that they ask initially, and also the information that they feed you within the interview, because they are wanting to see how teachable you are, and that means responding to what they're saying. And also don't worry if think you've made a mistake. Again, looking at how teachable you are, so we're looking at how responsive you are once you've made a mistake to being corrected, but also even if you don't realise, it's only one thing out of the whole interview and the rest of the information we get about you. So you can see that one of our tutors said, we can see how candidates think rather than just parroting information. They're not looking at what you know, they're looking at how you think. So just in summary then, how to prepare. Like I said, practice speaking out loud, know your personal statement, continue exploring your subject. Tutors, especially in the icebreaker, might ask you what kind of things you've been reading lately, if you're doing a humanities subject, or how you've been exploring your subject. So it's great to have some things to talk about there, and just in general to develop your own interest and knowledge. Watch mock interview videos. There are loads produced by Oxford centrally and different departments, but do try not to watch ones that aren't by Oxford or bits of Oxford University itself. Sometimes other kind of companies or individuals will make mock interview videos, but they're not always as reflective or representative of what Oxford interviews are actually like. Also have a look through the resource pack that we sent you with your initial emails. There's lots of stuff in there. And do try out Microsoft Teams in advance, just to kind of see what it looks like. I mean, you will get the chance to try it out because you'll all be joining subject sessions today. So just have a look at what all the different buttons do. So on the next slide, there's just a picture of the bar as it will come up in the subject sessions and in your actual interview. So you've got the Teams chat. So for today, you can use the chat to share your ideas with each other and the tutor in your subject sessions. If you want to unmute and or turn your camera on, then you can put your hand up using the hands up button and unmute yourself to ask a question or answer a question. If you've agreed to turn your camera and or your microphone on during the session, then you can see there the buttons that you need to do that. And if at any time you need to leave the call when you're done, or if you're having technical difficulties, then it's just the big red button that says leave.